Okay, so we're going to talk about the use of images for making a course more attractive and engaging to students. Leo, what can you tell me about your use of images in the courses that you run?
Well, I really agree that it's nice to make courses a bit more attractive than they quite often naturally look in learning platforms. If you just kind of leave them as they look by default. And one of the things that we've done in a course that I've worked on is to make some nice headings that give the whole course a nice kind of look and feel, and make kind of all the sections work nicely together and have a kind of a similar appearance. And so the images really are just images of words rather than of things, but it's really important if you're using images of words to put in the alt text for people that are unable to read the image.
Thank you.
Well, certainly we've used it in one of our Library and Information Skills Moodle module that we've created, which is it's an open course. So we've used Creative Commons, but we have also been made very much aware about accessibility. So we've gone back and made the size of the font bigger as well and things like that. But being in the library, we have access to lots of high quality audio visual material. So we've been using things from Bob National and Canopy, where you can actually embed the film clip that you want to, as well as putting a link to the fuller version. So it all helps to give a different approach to the same content.
I'll just pick up on Leo's comments actually, because we've done something similar in using imagery to help students navigate through the content, because I think that one of the problems we have these days is that students are rather overwhelmed by all the resources and they're looking for signposts which kind of guide them through the content. So using simple graphics in terms of icons and lettering just provides some sort of consistency through the courses they're working through, and it's kind of that familiarity and understanding of what they're meant to be doing next, which makes it more accessible. As you say as well, actually, Elizabeth, I think that accessibility is very important, and the students kind of just like it. It looks smart, it looks professional, and it helps them use the content. So I think it's really important, actually.
Images are also really important for context as well. So if you're teaching a very visual subject, it's a learning material, it's a learning object, having images.
We found at the vet school here, it's been really valuable to move from the kind of the physical to the digital in terms of imagery, because a lot of our topics are very kind of visually rich. For example, our anatomy specimens, you know, they're fascinating, but they're sitting in pots in our museum, and students don't get to see them very much because they're locked away. But just the simple process of taking good digital photographs, putting those images into something as simple as PowerPoint, annotating the images with some arrows and text, and then uploading that into our VLE has made those specimens suddenly available to a much wider audience in a much more interactive way, and students have really valued that. So I think it doesn't take very much to make a big difference with images.
Have you found that students actually then, because they also have access to museum, actually start making use of images in submissions as well?
Yeah.
So they are picking up on what they've seen and then reproducing it. It's good practice.
And actually you can go the next step, which is what some of our students have helped us do, which is begin to animate the images, because you can then turn them, well, in a PowerPoint you can have a series of images in a series of slides, and as you work through you can actually, the first slide is a picture of a specimen, for example, with no descriptors, but just asking you what are the key specimens identified in the image, perhaps with arrows. And the next slide is the text all added to the image. That simple step of having two slides instead of one means the students are being challenged by the first image before they go to the second when they get the answers, and it makes quite a big difference.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So let's talk about Twitter. So I've been using Twitter since Twitter pretty much started as a way of sharing, communicating, asking questions to my followers. But in an academic context, more and more academics have started using Twitter for teaching and learning and for their students. Elizabeth, have you used Twitter at all in your practice?
Not necessarily directly for teaching, but the library has a Twitter account, so we send out things sort of promoting new resources, but also workshops and responding to queries as well, which is quite an immediate thing. Rather than waiting hours, you get almost an instant response. And students really appreciate that, and the ability to actually contribute as well, and quickly to a particular topic or area of interest. So we pick up themes from that and then provide additional materials. So that is quite interesting in teaching in that way, but learning from the queries that come from students rather than us just saying this is what we think you should be interested in.
Yeah, I was just going to say, as well as using Twitter to push information out or news, which is a great way of using it, something that I think a lot of students might not be as aware of is how many great education-related hashtags there are that they could kind of look up and find what people are tweeting in relation to. And that could, depending on the subject matter, could really lead them to a wealth of interesting resources and really live current topics that people are talking about. So I think that's, even if you're not directly using Twitter as a teacher, you could always encourage students to make use of relevant hashtags that relate to their studies.
I think teachers can also use it because there are lots of very interesting chats that take place. One that I'm familiar with is Learning Technology and Higher Education chat, which takes place every Wednesday. But there's a vast array of resources that, as well as ideas and feedback and comments from practitioners, as well as those who are new to it. So you learn a lot and you share a lot as well. And you only have to put out a request for, particular resources. There are paper, etc., and you're swamped by the feedback that you get. So both, I think, teachers and students can benefit from participating in those sort of conversations.
One of the things that I'm a bit concerned about, though, with Twitter is that not all our students use Twitter, and we don't want to be exclusive and using a platform which some are not familiar with. In fact, less than 20% of our students are regular Twitter users from the surveys we do. So that was a concern when we started looking at it. But one thing we've done, which I think addresses that to some extent, is we have appointed individual students in each year group to be the key Twitter feed with a standard hashtag for that year. And so whenever any students find a resource which is useful, a web link relates to that day's teaching, they tweet it to this list, and the list is embedded in the VLE in Moodle. So it comes up as in the left-hand column. Mm-hmm. So these tweets are coming through all the time. You don't actually need to know how to use Twitter to benefit from the tweets themselves. And it does mean that more students can contribute to adding in links without having to do anything on the VLE itself. It's automatically done through Twitter. So it's actually worked quite well for us. But I think it's really important to realise with all these technologies that students aren't as far advanced as we'd like to think they are. Sometimes the academics are actually using it more effective than students. So we have to be cautious not to push the boundaries too fast.
Brilliant. Thank you. Let's talk about video. Obviously, we are appearing in a video, so we know it's important to have a video content and audio and screencasts. Elizabeth, you mentioned that you embed videos, pre-existing, pre-made videos into your courses. Do you want to tell us about that?
We have created, screen captures for literacy and information skills Moodle module, just demonstrating very quick and easy how to get to particular resources and how to use particular resources. They tend to be things that students ask over and over again, and after a while they might get a bit embarrassed if this is the third time that they've asked, so we've created it so they can access it without any worry as many times as they need to. And it also helps them to be familiar with the content before they actually start to use it, because they know where everything is. And that's quite important, rather than having very text-heavy instructions, which can be misleading for some students. And if we have students with dyslexia, it's better if they're just watching where the pointer is going, etc., rather than having to read reams of instructions. So yeah, we create quite a few, and we use free apps that are available to do screen capture. We haven't gone to the stage of having high quality production yet, but we might consider it. And in fact, we're considering creating an animated video. I know we're going to be very careful about that. We don't want to titter into the sort of area of being cartoons, but we want it to be engaging but at the right level. So that's our next thing that we're going to explore, trying to do using animation.
And how would you do the animation? What sort of software would you use for that?
Well, we've looked at what some free software that are available. There's some things that you can use, avatars, or this thing is Cowpow, Powtoons that you can use. But I think we're going to be very selective and very careful at our first little foray into it. and ask for feedback on it and then build from there. But we just thought it would break it up a bit more to try that. And also it's something that students can possibly use when they're doing, you can embed those sort of things in PowerPoint presentations as well. So rather than sort of, you can break it up where they can do a bit of the presentation and then have an avatar speaking and then go back to presentation. So it just mixes it up a bit more.
It's quite good for when you've got people that are willing to do a voiceover, but not necessarily to be filmed.
Indeed. Very true.
We made this interesting kind of animation, which was to do with mental health, and it was something where we didn't feel that anybody wanted to speak to camera, but they were happy to be voiced over. So it was a very simple sort of animation, but really effective for a website. And it actually had more impact, I think, in some ways than having somebody talking to camera itself.
Good. I look forward to trying that out and see how it goes.
Elizabeth, you mentioned quality and some of your videos on super high spec, 3 cameras, lighting. Tell me about that, Leo. You know, is that an issue for students that they're expecting quality, or?
I think that mostly they're more concerned about how useful the content is, and they understand that you're not, you know, you don't have a kind of a full kind of TV studio at your disposal. And usually I think students are quite impressed that you've made a video at all.
I think I totally agree. It is about the content and point of need. And I think at the end of the day, it's about if they need it. Are you going to wait until you've got 6 months to do something, or are you going to produce something now that's going to help them at the time that they need it? That's the important bit.
And I mean, most of our students are now making videos anyway with their phones, and they kind of see that as the kind of baseline, I think. So they're not necessarily looking for something too sophisticated, as long as it's kind of accessible. But we've had students, for example, going out on field trips, making a kind of day in the life of that experience and filming everything as they go. And it's really useful because it's actually seen through the eyes of the student. And they talk about all the issues they had to confront and all the kind of things that other students would need to think about when they go on the same sort of trip. And I think more student developed videos really should be one way we should be taking things forward.
No, that's absolutely true. It's because the barrier to entry to making a video now is really quite low. Then I think, you know, we should sort of be less concerned about the quality of production values and more just see it as a skill that everybody can adopt and benefit from.
So in terms of audio content, Nick, do you use audio in courses?
We do in certain areas. I think podcasting has been an interesting one for us because we originally looked at iTunes U as an opportunity to publish our podcasts, and we went away from that in the end and developed our own podcasting system. But we used a system whereby we got one academic to take responsibility for interviewing other members of staff to kind of highlight their key areas of research. So we did 50 of these, and they covered all the key topics that we do here at the college. But they were kind of pitched at a level which they'd be interesting for the general public as well as for our students. And they were about 45 minutes long, so quite a long podcast, and quite a lot of research went into them. But they were very popular, and we had a lot of visits from outside the college. And I think one of the attractions for us was that not only were we kind of looking at disseminating our research to a bigger audience, but also promoting the college as part of that process, letting people know what we actually do, which I think was quite important for us.
Definitely. I think for a teacher that's using podcasts as part of their course as well, it can be a really great way. Again, quite simple to do, to just record some audio with your phone as a way of making a recording about some key information that people might miss or might want to revisit. For example, about an upcoming assessment. You know, just so that students can revisit that and make sure that they've covered all the bases when they're working on their assignment.
And it's so easy to do. It's very quick, very easy. You know, can be done immediately, straight into the virtual learning environment.